You ever notice how a single belief, just a quiet sentence sitting in the back of your mind, can shape the entire way you walk through the world? You wake up in the morning, and before your eyes even fully open, something inside you whispers a story about who you are. Maybe it's subtle, almost like the soft click of a door you didn't realize had closed. I'm not ready. I can't do this. People like me don't get far. And without questioning it, you step into your day as if that belief were a law of nature. Yet, if you slow down for even a moment, you begin to sense the strange weight of it. How a thought, something with no mass, no body, no physical shape, can alter the course of your life more powerfully than any visible obstacle ever could. It's almost absurd, isn't it, that an inner whisper can bend the architecture of your reality? But look closely and you can feel the truth of it in your spine. You've lived entire chapters based on ideas you never consciously chose. You've avoided people you might have loved, declined opportunities that could have changed everything, stayed silent when your voice could have rewritten the moment. And the wildest part is, none of it was fate. It wasn't destiny. It wasn't the universe closing its doors. It was you, carrying an invisible script written years ago, repeating it like a prayer you didn't know you were saying. But what if belief is not a cage, but a tool? What if it's not a verdict, but a doorway? What if the mind, like a river, changes its shape the moment you introduce a new current? Imagine how differently you would breathe if just once you replaced the old whisper with a new one that said, I can change, I am capable, I am allowed to become more than what I was. If a belief can limit your life, couldn't a belief also expand it? And if it can expand it, how far, how deeply, how completely? That's the question pulsing beneath everything. What if the story you believe is the only thing standing between the life you have and the life you could live? You walk through your day like a shadow, thinking you are fully awake, fully present. But look closely, how often are you really noticing? At the coffee shop, your eyes scan faces, but your mind is already elsewhere, replaying yesterday's failures or tomorrow's anxieties. You smile at a friend, nodding at their words, yet your attention is trapped in the hum of your own stories. At work, you check boxes, attend meetings, respond to emails, and call it productivity. But how much of it is simply a performance, a ritual repeated so often you no longer see its emptiness? And at home, perhaps the illusion grows stronger. You sit across from someone you love, hearing their voice, but only listening, because the inner noise, expectations, judgments, anxieties drowns out the room. You think you are living life, but you are often living a script someone else wrote. Your parents, your teachers, society at large. And that's the beauty and danger of this illusion. It feels so real. It's comforting, familiar, predictable. You tell yourself, I am fine, I am in control, this is normal. But normality is often a soft prison, a cage woven from unexamined beliefs, habitual thoughts, and automatic reactions. The world outside may seem solid, unchanging, but inside, a quiet chaos governs your fears, your doubts, your hidden narratives, shaping every gesture, every choice. And yet, almost imperceptibly, a fissure appears, a moment when the pattern falters. A question rises, quietly, insistently. Is this all there is? Perhaps you notice a subtle dissonance when people laugh, but you feel detached. You observe a conversation and realize your responses were rehearsed. You glance in the mirror and see someone who looks the same, speaks the same, moves the same, but feels like a stranger in their own skin. That, right there, is the first hint of awakening, the first glimpse beyond the illusion. It is uncomfortable, because it asks you to confront how deeply you have been asleep, not in a literal sense, but in the way your mind, your beliefs, and your assumptions have guided you unquestioned. And yet, in that discomfort, lies possibility. For the same mind that has kept you locked in patterns also carries the seed of awareness. You are not bound forever. Awareness whispers, there is more. And suddenly, the ordinary, the mundane, the everyday routines, the small, unnoticed rituals of your life, begin to reveal their hidden shapes, their unspoken rules. You start to sense that behind the smiles, the work, the words, there is a world waiting to be seen, waiting for your attention, waiting for your belief to shift. And it is, in that shift, subtle but profound, that the path begins. Then comes the moment, the quiet, almost imperceptible crack in the illusion where you see the world differently. And for the first time, you feel the weight and wonder of it. You might be standing in a crowded street, and suddenly, the chatter, the rush, the ordinary motions of people passing by, all seem strange, as if you are witnessing them through someone else's eyes. It is startling, unsettling, and strangely beautiful. You notice patterns you never saw before, the rehearsed gestures, the hidden anxieties, the unspoken compromises everyone carries like invisible backpacks. You feel a sharp intimacy with life itself, as if the universe has leaned in and whispered, "Do you see now?" And the strange thing is, the awakening doesn't come with fanfare. It is quiet, almost banal, a glance, a question, a pause. You notice how you reacted automatically before, and realize that nothing is fixed, nothing is certain, and yet, everything is alive, vibrating with potential. There is a thrill in the awareness, yes, but also a subtle danger. For with clarity comes responsibility, the responsibility to notice, to choose, to act consciously instead of sleeping through your own story. You see your own beliefs, the ones that have guided every choice, every fear, every desire, and you realize they are malleable. They are not walls, but clay. And with that realization comes a strange tension. You can no longer pretend that life is simple. You feel a tug between the comfort of what you know and the curiosity of what you might become. You might catch yourself observing your own habits with a quiet astonishment, thinking, "So this is how I have been living all along." And in that reflection, a kind of awe arises, an awe for the complexity of your own mind, for the hidden currents that shape your days, for the subtle power of a single belief. Perhaps you feel both exhilarated and lonely, because once you awaken, the familiar patterns of the world seem smaller, more fragile, and sometimes even absurd. People move as if in a trance, unaware of the deeper currents you now perceive. And yet, even in this fragile, strange state, there is a spark, a knowing that the very same mind that created your limitations can now create liberation, that the same beliefs that have guided you unconsciously can be rewritten consciously. The awakening is not an event. It is a doorway that invites you to step into a life shaped, not by inherited stories, not by automatic scripts, but by the conscious, deliberate choices of your own mind. And the question lingers, almost like a breath. Do you dare step through it? As the awakening deepens, you start to feel a quiet separation from the world you once moved through so naturally. It is subtle, at first an odd sensation that no one else seems to notice the things you notice. That your laughter in a room full of people feels slightly hollow because you see what is unspoken, what is avoided, what is left unsaid. You try to speak, but the words feel heavy, almost dangerous, because they carry a truth that others are not ready to hear. You watch someone you care about make the same mistakes, repeat the same compromises, and you feel a pang of both love and sorrow. Because awareness has given you eyes that see the hidden weight in every action. In this space, you begin to understand what it means to be truly alone, not physically, but internally, in your perception. You are surrounded by people, yet a subtle chasm opens between you and the rhythms of everyday life. You might notice someone smiling, and instantly recognize the small fears behind that smile. A conversation feels like a delicate dance of illusions, polite facades, and hidden desires. And suddenly you are painfully aware that most of the world moves without noticing these layers. There is a weight to seeing too much, to understanding too clearly. And it can make ordinary interactions feel exhausting, even alien. You might start retreating inward, preferring quiet walks or moments of solitude. Not out of disdain, but because the world's clamor, its unconsciousness, its habitual noise feels overwhelming. And in that solitude, strange insights arrive, almost like gifts wrapped in shadows. You see the structures that shape people's lives, the beliefs that bind them, the unspoken contracts we all follow, day after day. And yet, isolation is a double-edged sword. While it sharpens awareness, it also brings longing for connection, for understanding, for someone who sees the world as you do. Perhaps you meet another person briefly. Someone whose gaze lingers just a little longer than necessary. Someone who seems to understand without words, and for a fleeting moment, the isolation lifts. But it never disappears completely, because your perception has changed irreversibly. You have glimpsed the depth beneath the surface, and the surface now feels shallow, fragile, almost artificial. And so you learn a quiet patience, a reverent distance. Understanding that sometimes to preserve your own clarity, you must step back, observe without interfering, love without being consumed. You exist in two worlds, the ordinary one everyone inhabits, and the subtle, complex one only your awakened awareness can perceive. And in that tension, that strange bittersweet balance, you begin to understand isolation is not punishment. It is a necessary companion on the path toward conscious living. A mirror reflecting both the weight of seeing and the freedom it can bring. And even in this solitude, the mind whispers its eternal invitation. Can you hold both awareness and compassion, clarity and connection, without losing yourself? And then comes the friction, the inner battle that awakens the deepest tension of all. Because seeing clearly is not enough. Seeing clearly demands choice. You notice injustice, dishonesty, subtle cruelty, or self-deception around you, and suddenly your mind splits into two voices, one that whispers, "Say something, intervene, act," and another that cautions, "Stay silent, observe, survive." Every interaction becomes a test of courage and discernment. Perhaps you witness a friend repeating a pattern of self-sabotage, or a colleague quietly taking advantage of others, or even a loved one trapped in denial. Your heart urges you forward, but your mind calculates the cost, the conflict between your impulse to act and the instinct to preserve peace, connection, or safety. You realize that life is not divided neatly into right and wrong. It is shaded, complex, and full of consequence. To speak is to risk misunderstanding, to create tension, to disturb someone else's comfort. To remain silent is to compromise your own integrity, to feed the illusion, to perpetuate patterns that no longer serve anyone. And so the struggle becomes internal, but no less heavy. Your thoughts spin in quiet loops, asking, "Do I intervene, or do I let it unfold?" Every choice feels monumental, because awareness has made the stakes intimate, personal, inescapable. The world moves forward, and you cannot unsee what you see. Your mind is both witness and participant, caught between empathy and frustration, longing and restraint. And yet, there is beauty in this tension. The conflict is not a curse, it is a sign that your awareness matters, that your perception has grown beyond complacency. You feel the pulse of life in its raw, unfiltered complexity, and you know that every choice, even an action, shapes the ripple of existence around you. Perhaps you try to act carefully, delicately, testing your voice in small ways, only to discover that influence is subtle, slow, and sometimes invisible. And slowly, with each decision, you learn the delicate art of balance, when to speak, when to hold back, when to intervene, and when to simply observe. It is a mastery born not of certainty, but of discernment, not of power, but of understanding. And the question settles quietly in your chest, persistent and unrelenting. How do you honor truth without destroying connection? And act with awareness without being consumed by the world's weight? And then comes the moment when the mind, stretched by awareness, begins to tremble under its own intensity. You notice everything, remember everything, feel everything. Suddenly, the world becomes too vast, too vivid, too real. The emotions you once managed in fragments now surge through you like tidal waves. The sorrow of human suffering, the frustration of injustice, the quiet despair in people's unexamined lives. You try to hold it together, but every interaction, every thought, every observation seems to pull you further into the undertow. It is as if your mind has become a sponge, absorbing the pain, the fear, the anxiety, and the quiet desperation of everyone around you. The collapse is subtle at first: moments of fatigue, a gnawing sense of unease, nights where sleep offers no refuge. You begin to notice that even joy feels tinged with sorrow because clarity has shown you the fragility of all things. The metaphors arise effortlessly in your imagination. You are a glass vessel. Once whole, now filled with too much light and shadow, trembling under its own reflection. A tree uprooted in a storm, swaying helplessly but still striving to stand. A river, once calm and contained, now turbulent, carrying debris from every corner of its course. And yet, even in this unraveling, there is a strange, haunting beauty. You feel deeply, more deeply than most dare, and there is a resonance, a hum of life coursing through every fiber of your being. But exhaustion sets in, not just physical, but emotional, mental, existential. You realize that over-awareness is both a gift and a burden, a double-edged sword that sharpens perception while threatening to fracture the self. And in this raw, trembling space, the question that has haunted your journey becomes pressing, unavoidable. How do you carry this clarity without being consumed by it? Because collapse is not the end, it is a reckoning. It is the point where you must confront your own limits, where you must learn to release, to let go, to breathe, to choose what to carry and what to leave behind. The collapse teaches you humility, endurance, and the quiet necessity of boundaries. It whispers that strength is not in seeing everything at once, but in knowing when to step back, when to center yourself, when to allow the currents of life to pass without drowning you. And in that trembling, in that precarious balance between being overwhelmed and remaining present, the mind begins to sense a path forward, a glimmer of the wisdom waiting just beyond the storm. And then, after the storm of awareness and collapse, a subtle shift occurs. You begin to understand that clarity does not require constant struggle, that consciousness does not demand endless vigilance. The revelation comes quietly. Like dawn brushing light across a dark horizon, you notice that the same mind that carried the weight, that absorbed sorrow, that trembled under insight, is also capable of gentleness, discernment, and peace. You start to see that life's complexity need not crush you. Rather, it can guide you toward intentional living. Boundaries emerge naturally, not as walls to separate, but as frames to focus. To protect your energy while still allowing connection. You realize that the act of seeing clearly does not obligate you to fix everything, save everyone, or intervene in all suffering. Some things are beyond you, and that acceptance becomes liberating. Like a sculptor, with a block of marble, you learn to chip away what is unnecessary, to let go of what is not yours to carry, and to shape your life with conscious attention. The people, your past awareness, isolation, and conflict now become teachers rather than prisons. Your collapse, a necessary threshold to maturity. You understand that the mind is both a mirror and a lens. It reflects the world as it is, but it can also focus, frame, and transform it. And so, you engage with life more deliberately. You listen without judgment, act without compulsion, and believe with conscious intention. The revelation is this: you are never powerless, even in the face of immense complexity. Because the very act of changing your belief changes the shape of your reality. You see that life is an ongoing dance between awareness and action, perception and patience, insight and surrender. And in that dance, you finally understand the paradox that has guided your journey from the beginning. The same mind that binds you also frees you. The same beliefs that have limited you can now be the instrument of transformation. The revelation is simple yet profound. You are the architect of your own consciousness. And through belief, you can rewire the very life you live. And now, as you step fully into this understanding, you begin to integrate it into the rhythm of your life. You notice that change does not come as a single monumental event, but as a series of subtle shifts, small adjustments in how you think, feel, and respond. Belief becomes the brush, your mind the canvas. And each conscious thought adds color, depth, and form to the life you are shaping. You walk through your days noticing patterns without judgment, feeling deeply without being consumed, acting with intention without needing to control everything. The paradox from the beginning, the thought that a single belief can both imprison and liberate you, now settles into clarity. You see that the mind, once a river bending you in unseen ways, can also become a channel you guide, a flow that carries possibility rather than limitation. You encounter the world with empathy, not burden, with discernment, not rigidity. With presence, not distraction. You notice how small acts, a word spoken, a thought chosen, a belief embraced radiate outward, touching the texture of life around you. And you understand that the journey is ongoing. Awareness does not end with revelation. You will